My Lightning Conduit is one of the most underrated and one of the most powerful builds for League starting. This was even tested by people who have never played PoE in their life. So there's no way anything can go wrong with you as well. This was redesigned during the 3.23 League start where it received a massive buff with quality. If you try this build, you'll witness progress that's like 5 levels ahead of each zone. But wait, there is a catch. Anything that has immunity to shock or avoid elemental ailments will be a big no for this build to engage with. But since these are only found in a particular map mod and a monster mod, you can choose not to engage with them. This is the only major downside of this build. So what is this made for? The answer is too wide, as it's great for all content except for T12 plus essences and the ones that require a lot of movement speed. It can clear packs of monsters while also deleting tankier bosses in seconds. Also, here are a couple of details that I missed out from my previous guide in 3.23. We have to apply the shocks with a secondary skill or buff effect in order for Lightning Conduit to function. If you're a new player, you can still get used to this playstyle. When you hit Orb of Storms with a lightning skill, it causes a chain of arcs to hit the target. It also applies shock to the enemies, provided you also have Shaper of Storms Ascendancy point. The target also has to be close to the circle, so this can be a bit annoying with some bosses like Hydra and the others that keep teleporting. And I would recommend using Steel Skin manually, depending on the situations that you're in. But if you feel that it's too much of buttons, you can link automation with the guard skill, and this applies to all my builds. Now, if there's some way we can automate or trigger Shock Nova without losing its effect, it can be groundbreaking, because this skill can add up to 20% extra to the maximum shock effect. And for each 5% shock effect, we gain 20% more damage, totaling up to 100% more damage. So this is something that I'll have to look into later in the league. When it comes to the gear setup, Singularity Scepters are quite cheap and easily available in Trade League. Each of these is a massive damage boost to the build, as you can see. Voice of the Storm is not mandatory, also not an easy unique to get in day 1, but it's an item that only a few builds use. Although if you don't have this, just try to get any rare amulet with life +1 lightning and cast speed, as this makes very little difference. Now, Valakor's Sign Ring has got several good uses which are significantly good for the build during endgame. If you don't get this, just use a Barracks Grip. Impulsa is a huge clear speed upgrade for this build. It does no extra damage, but it's pretty smooth for mapping along with shock effect that it provides. The Unnerved debuff is another great source of damage for this build. We get this from the Eater implicit on our gloves. If you're wondering why we didn't take the shock spread modifier here, it's because we already have this from the mastery. And if you have this mod for lightning exposure in your gloves, you can remove Wave of Conviction from the gem setup. And if you get your hands on a Thunderfist unique gloves, you can throw the Lightning Conduit setup into it, as this is much more powerful than the Sixling setup. The other important Aldridge implicits include lightning exposure in our gloves, cast speed and physical damage taken as elemental damage from our helmet, and the action speed from our boots. The rest of the items and mods are pretty straightforward. If you cap your spell suppression from the gear, you don't need this entire section. This can save you 7 passive points. You'll need a life flask with immunity to bleeding and corrupted blood. These utility flasks are optional, as your flask sustain is completely dependent on killing the monsters. You can even use 4 life flasks when you fight pinnacle bosses. For mana reservation efficiency, we have stretched out all our notables at the top and the ranger section. This is including the mana mastery, so you don't need any more from the gear than this. You're using the golem setup the same way as I mentioned in the fire trap build of the series. It provides a distraction, and you can choose the buffs that you lack in your build. Are you leeching Energy Shield? Yes. From the Energy Leech support, which is always active since we're spending Energy Shield from our skills instead of mana. Finally, if you're wondering why 65% shock effect, we have this mastery and we are scaling shock effect from several sources. This scales with damage as well. But with Guardian and Pinnacle bosses, in reality, this can vary from hit to hit, as they have high elemental resistances. For leveling this build, you can start with Lightning Tendrils, which is an extremely underrated skill because of the playstyle. The skill gains massive damage with every ounce of flat elemental damage added to it. This is because of the critical strike multiplier scaling and the effectiveness of added damage to the gem itself. Make sure to follow the leveling gem setup mentioned in the notes section. Under no circumstances should you start Lightning Conduit without Shaper of Storms. Once you finish Lab 1 and grab this, switch to Lightning Conduit. And you should also grab the Elemental Overload Keystone. For the secondary skill to apply the shocks at early levels, I highly recommend using Stormbrand instead with the same setup, as it requires more AoE for Orb of Storms to be more reliable for this. You can get Lightning Pen from the Shiosa quest in Act 3 or from Lily in Act 5. From here on, scale Shock Effect as much as you can from the passive tree. Fix your attributes with these nodes or with the amulets. Also make sure to grab either Grace or Determination after Act 3. This is not just for this build but also for leveling all my builds. The difficulty in Act 4 is quite a spike if you don't have these things. Prioritize in the auras that you need the most until you stretch out your passive tree with all the mana reservation. I have mentioned the rest of the details for leveling in the POB. My video from 3.24 also shows a step-by-step leveling guide for the passive tree. If you enjoyed this guide, make sure to check out the other builds from my 3.24 series. And thank you for watching.
Ensuring our descendants have the means